we get to questions and feedback. I know we have way too many slides, and the important thing is to hear from folks in the room because you took the time to come here today, and we so appreciate that. So if I go too fast on anything, or if Mitch does, just let us know, and we'll make sure we slow things down. So I am Quanbeck. I am your loyal and dedicated superintendent, and I am thrilled that you guys came today. This is our first bond meeting, so it is our baby voyage, you're right. So if we seem a little like, what am I doing? That's very accurate. We know that the kind of the beginning of a communication and getting feedback around a bond, it's really a process. And we know that as we listen with folks and as we, revise, we know that folks will be coming out more. This is just the start. I also want to acknowledge that it's July and we have an hour together, and certainly we'll stay longer if you guys have questions and such. And in the room, we've got all kinds of good friends. We've got Mitch, who is our school board president. He'll be helping me with the slide deck tonight. I have to acknowledge Principal Gould, who is the principal of the middle school, high school, who you guys might know if you grew up here, because you grew up here too. We have Sergeant Gould over here, and they are not related, I found out. They grew up near each other, which is fantastic. Kathleen Askelson, who is our right now CFO. Holly Harlan's our CFO, and she's out on maternity leave with the most beautiful baby boy, who we get to meet tomorrow, Liam. We've got Mike Moonen in the back, who is our facilities guru consultant, who is really helping us with systems and structures as we're really trying to be thoughtful about how we think about our processes and our facilities in Clear Creek. We've got Justin Watnabe in the back, who is our director of facilities and all things, I say buildingness, but he's working closely with Mike to really develop the systems and structures. And then Heidi Lupinacci, who is our GT guru, plus professional learning, plus early childhood, plus induction, and anything else we throw away. She's recording tonight so that we can post the recording as well as we'll post the slide deck. So that was a really long intro. Here we go. So agenda, really just to share, here's what we know so far. What do we know about our facilities? What's in a bond? Because as a taxpayer, I would think you'd be wondering, what will our schools and our kids and our families get, and why do you need that? And then similarly, how much is it going to cost you? Like, those are really important things. So we'll go through those. We'll leave time for question and answer and feedback. As you're thinking of your questions, capture them on the index cards. We'd love it if you would do that. That'll help us as we kind of organize the questions, because we'll collect those right before we do Q&A, and that'll help us see if there's duplicate questions and try to address those as nuances as as well as we'll begin an FAQ document with a Q&A, so if I have the index cards, that helps us. Welcome everybody, we just started. In terms of norms, I'm an educator, so I always want to put those out there. So thank you ahead of time for respecting the multiple perspectives in the room. We acknowledge that this could be sort of an emotional topic, right? Like, we're asking for people to really dig into some information and share their thoughts. And so we know that folks could be on lots of different kind of sides in the room per se. I love it, I hate it, I don't know yet. Giving others time to speak, that just, that goes without saying. And then I already talked about writing questions on the note cards. So when we think about our facilities, I think it's important to always connect it back to our teaching and learning, our instructional programming. We are no longer the schools of the yesteryear. I say constantly that we've got to prepare our kids for their future, not our past. This is our graduate profile. I won't go into a ton of details on our website. We're in love with it. It was co-created by kids, by educators, by our business folks, by our local community. And these are the things that we really emphasize with adults and kids in our district. When it comes to facilities, we know that we want the best learning environment for our students. We believe that beautiful learning environments, light-filled outdoors, look where we are, indoors, whether the classroom is here or we're taking kids outside, we want the best for our kids. Warm, safe, and dry is a term that we use to really capture, what does it mean around school safety and security, which is a whole another level, I'm just gonna call it out, each year we have new challenges to wrestle with, and we have to get better every single year. And we want our kids in comfortable learning environments, whether it's cooler than we are right now, it's a little warm in here, or it's nice and warm in January. And then we want our learning environments to support our instructional programming. So very quickly, as Kathleen and I were talking about this, she was so good, she's like, do you think you need to describe what a bond is? Yeah, because as a new superintendent, gosh, I'm going on my 3rd year now, it's easy to confuse mill and bond and how our schools funded and all of those things. The easiest thing to really think when you think bonds is B is for bonds, B is for buildings. It's really about the buildings, and it's not for operational costs like instructional materials or compensation. That's a mill, or that's general fund. But a bond is specific to say, hey, we need a new building, or we need to make some significant repairs to our HVAC system, or whatever it may be. So that's a bond. That's really important. Anything, Kathleen, I missed on that? Okay, so yeah, I'm going kind of fast. So challenges. Enrollment's really interesting. I'll just say it in Clear Creek, and there's some nuances that I wanted to call out. So enrollment is a challenge. I mean, part of it is that we've got a population that, when you look at the demographics, they are getting older and their kids have already attended school. We love the fact that so many of our folks age in place. When I meet with our Rotary members in town, it's like, I want to hug them all up. Like, we've got awesome, supportive community members in Clear Creek. I feel like I have won the superintendent lottery coming here. So in no way is that a negative in terms of our community. It's beautiful. However, it means fewer kids in schools, and fewer kids, just point blank, means less for the current students. At the same time, we have a really hot real estate market. We're all living that, right? Like, we're watching our home values go up, and people are moving out of the city. And so that creates this really interesting almost question for the cities, for the counties, and it creates a situation where we as a school district say, well, what's the right thing? How do we plan? And we know growth is coming. We don't know how quickly, but it's coming, and we have to plan for that. I'm really glad I'm not on the planning and zoning council for the city right now. Can I say that? We also, this is our reality, and I don't know how much this has been talked about in the past. We have competing school districts, and I'll just say I came out of Jeffco. I was there for 25 years. Jeffco friend back there. I live in Evergreen, so I get it from so many different perspectives. And again, this is an amazing place. Part of me wants to keep it a secret, so we continue to have this amazing small community. But we've dropped in enrollment. I mean, I think a number of us have talked about this already. 20 years, we've gone to half of what we were before. So the biggest takeaway from that for me is declining enrollment means less programming for our students, less availability. We don't have the same efficiencies. I still need a principal at the middle school, high school, for example, but when it comes down to how many electives I can offer or what I can do with my buildings, declining enrollment presents a huge challenge. So I almost have to think of it that way in terms of the tensions. Other challenges, and this has been something we've really taken some time to dig into, thanks to some really great people in the room who's been helping us with this. We were able to do facility assessments on each of our buildings in the last year and a half, thanks to the Department of Education, CDE, or the state. We did it because we were going after best grants. We go after just about every grant that we can, because I want the most for our kids and the best for our kids. Through that process, we had a pretty real picture of here's what we have in our buildings. And I want to acknowledge first, it's true in almost every district, there are more needs than there are resources, right? Like that's the truth in public education. However, what we really discovered is we have millions of dollars in needs in our schools. We are so grateful for the 2018 bond where we put in 3 playgrounds. I won't go into a ton of detail. King Murphy will finish by the fall. We put in boilers, we put in a generator, we did some roof work, we did an amazing athletic facility out there. If you've not seen it, please take some time before you leave today to look out the windows or walk down there. We did a ton of work, and yet the list is pretty long in terms of what the needs are. And again, we want the best learning environments for our kids. So what we also know is that we're in a situation where each year, this is from the State Department, the number of items that need to be fixed per the state are increasing, and the dollars are increasing. And I get a little anxiety when I think about the inflation. And you can't predict right now, right? We've been in a really low inflation spot for a while without getting too much in the weeds, because Kathleen will pull me off for speaking right now. But we know right now our construction costs from last year to this year have gone up between 12 and 18%. So the longer we wait, the we know it's going to be more expensive. So that's our reality. In terms of kind of what we have in front of us, I think this is a different order in the slides. Do you guys want me to? I'm looking at friends in the room. Is it okay if I keep going? Okay. Well, but I want to hang on. I want to go to a spot. Yeah, challenges, and then I apologize. We've been working on this times and times. I'm gonna go to the next one, you guys, and then I'll come back to this. Because yes, we want to talk about this, because I know Google recognizes this. And I was back there too. Hang on, you guys. Okay, so in terms of other challenges, and again, I think it's helpful to be a new superintendent. I still feel new even though I'm going on year 3. Because I can take kind of that outsider's view and say, whoa, these are some things we have to pay attention to. But I also can take a step back and really listen to the feedback from the community and look at the data. 2018, as I just talked about, that was really one of the first steps to kind of catch our facilities up. The beautiful thing about the 2018 bond is it was not a tax increase. That was wonderful. Just how the bonds were aging out and then the new one, that was fantastic. Before that, our last investment as a community was in 1999. I believe it was to build this building. I wasn't here then, but I'm making that assumption that's what it was. And that was a tax increase. And we've even gone back in time and kind of looked at what our reality was. The State Department keeps all of that information. So what that has created is we have, again, an incredible community that loves our kids, loves our schools, but we have a lot of maintenance items where things are just aging out. And I'll give you a good example. At King Murphy, when I open up the doors, like the handles don't always quite work. They're probably vintage 1982. So there's needs that haven't been addressed. We do our best as a district to use what we call capital reserves and transfer money when we can, but we're a small district, so we don't have large pots of money, and we've really prioritized spending on our instruction, spending on our teachers, spending on our kids. By the way, celebrations, we just, thanks to the board, approved it's about a 5.5% compensation increase for all employees. So yeah, super excited about that. Well, they deserve like triple that. And I know I'm not supposed to say that because our union will be, how about triple that? But they know I love them, but we need to give them everything we can. So, successes, I'm gonna hand it over to,
are we gonna go back to your,
reimagining?
Springs later?
Yes, yep, so if you wanna talk about some of the fun successes.
So our superintendent, she can't stop talking, she's already bragged about this stuff. So I'm not sure why I'm really here. We are wrapping up the 2018 bond, and as Superintendent Quanbeck mentioned, we did that we staged that as a short-term bond with no increase in expense to the property owners. And we did that by selling these bonds for those capital projects right after the bonds that built this high school were paid off. And right now we've got 2 programs that are still ongoing. In Georgetown, we've got a second phase of a new roof there. Georgetown, in the whole process, got a new boiler. They got 2 phases of roofing, and they got a new playground. In Carlson received a new boiler, and a new playground. And that playground was built to be moved if necessary, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later. And King Murphy, they got a generator. It's important. That end of the county doesn't really have the best electricity. It's not always there. And without the generator, we were finding ourselves often in threat of burst pipes because it would get cold quickly and the water would freeze. So that generator's going to help us from having those emergency repairs and things like that. And they also got a playground, and that's one of the items that's still open. And their playground will be finished this year, along with some new structural retaining walls to keep them safe and make sure that we've got a playground that will last. So three things that we keep emphasizing to the superintendent as she's marching forward and making our district better is that we really want to provide the best possible education for our students, not just now, but in the future. We need to make financially prudent decisions. We're a small community. We don't have a lot of reserves. We need to make good decisions and timely decisions. And part of being financially prudent, we have to efficiently and effectively use our buildings. And over the last 2.5 years or so, we've come a long way in understanding our buildings, how we do use them, and how we should be and can be using them. And that we've opened up a number of areas for the community as well. Our playgrounds now, when school's not in session, for example, are available to the community. And for a while, that wasn't true. Even the track down here.
Go back. There's the little slides like that here. There you go.
All right. So this slide's just meant to outline what we hope to do if the Board of Education authorizes a bond, and then we turn around and ask our citizens, will you help us borrow a big pile of money to improve our schools, the buildings of our thing. The first one on this list is food service for Georgetown Community School. All of our other schools during this last year, the students had an opportunity to have free breakfast and free lunch. And our friends at Georgetown, they don't have a kitchen to provide that service. So what we're proposing and what they've asked for is the facilities so they can provide food service. And that will also likely be open as a community kitchen as well. King Murphy, modernize and improve safety. The superintendent talked about that a little bit. But really one of the big things we want to do is broaden our offering in early childhood and expand that classroom space and do some cleanup, modernize the facility. It's pushing 40 years old, and a lot of the fixtures, a lot of the flooring is the original. It's been maintained, but it needs to be replaced. Here at Clear Creek High School and Middle School, safety improvements, again, replacing some of the fixtures. It's only 20 years old, but we do have some sections that need replacement, and Justin will be able to provide a little bit of detail on that in a little bit. And then that brings us to the big one, and that's reimagining what a school in Idaho Springs could look like, and what benefits that could bring both the students and the greater community. And we'll get into some of those details, I think, a little bit. So one thing I didn't mention earlier, Georgetown Community School is set to provide that service if they have the facility. They have the budget and the capacity to provide food service within their building. So that wouldn't be costing Clear Creek School District any additional money. Don't think there's anything new there. All right. Justin, can you help us understand some of the challenges at King Murphy? This is Justin, he's our facilities manager.
All right, so how we got to this point, as Karen mentioned, is not only was it general knowledge for me just being in buildings for a year now and having to deal with all of the issues, we also consultant in Mike to help us out with costing information, but also the CDE report. CDE report, is always available to the public, but it kind of brings out these line items of issues. And from that, we take those line items, we figure out what we can do in terms of capital improvement projects, what we kind of think we can get a little bit more longevity out of in terms of mechanical equipment or a roof or any big ticket items. But then we also want to work with the school and also the community to figure out what type of projects would they like to see in their area. And this is kind of how we got to this conclusion for community. We know that, as Mitch already mentioned, is that we want to improve the exterior of the facility, which is a major need over there. I can't say because I wasn't there, but it does look like it's the original paint from the 1980s or when it was built. As Karen also mentioned, that even though we like our neighbors, our friends over at Jeffco, as I came from Jeffco and everything else.
Oh, I forgot that, 3.
Yeah. We're also competing to get those kids back over that general area. Wilmot Elementary School was very fortunate to have a very large renovation project over there. And it's a very nice facility looking out. But we want to compete and we want to make sure that we are able to keep those kids in our district or bring them back. And one of those areas, and from the principal and community has asked for, was an improvement of the exterior of the building. And like I said, it does need it. The siding is kind of falling apart. It doesn't need a full, remodel of there. We think maybe we can use some paint or something like that, but it's for future discussion. That was one of the projects. We also know that the gymnasium was a big investment that the school wanted to see. We still have the original flooring, most likely the original painting in there as well. This year is just the cafeteria, but we know that most of the, I would say 90% of the flooring and Kingwood is still the original, and that was one of the improvements that the school wanted to see done.
Yeah,
Please.
that's good.
Go for it.
All right. Some other projects that we are considering for Kingwood, which is going to total us roughly the 1.25 million mark for the overall bond. As mentioned, that we want to increase the preschool capacity over there. Currently, we have a room over there, which I forget the student count, but we want to double the size of that. And one of the areas, talking with the school, but also the fire department in terms of a good area, and the ability to actually have that room is some classrooms upstairs, which is going to require us to do some renovation work up there, but also provide safe access behind the building and everything. Improving the classroom environment, again, it's almost basically the whole facility in a way, whether it's the exterior building, the interior building, gymnasium, flooring, and all that kind of stuff. Karen had mentioned about our door locks over there. It does have the original 1980s equipment over there, which surprisingly every now and then you can find the parts for it. But it's at the point where we just really need to make it safer and secure, as they make better door locks for those. We have tons of key fobs type of technology now that makes it easier and safer for our schools. As we discussed the gym renovation, again, flooring improvements, basically the entire school. And then exterior repairs and improvements, some of those other items in there, just walkways, some minor, whether it be, landscaping out front, making it more welcome, or again, working with the school on that. This is kind of the project list that we came to a conclusion to.
Before we switch to the next school, I just want to give a little bit of enhancement to the preschool piece, because that's something we've done. And this year, we run a wait list at King Murphy for our preschool kids each year. And so we lose them when we can't take them, because we only have so many seats available. Workhoff is amazing, if you know her as a preschool teacher. We'd love to be able to double that. We've got a plan for doing it upstairs. We've been looking for grant dollars to do it, but that's something we feel like if we're able to welcome all of our preschoolers who want to be there, there's what we call a capture rate, and then they tend to go to kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Otherwise, if we lose them and can't meet their needs as preschoolers, then they'll go to Lebanon or Bergen or Marchdale. And I want my Jeffco friends to close their ears for a minute. So Marchdale's getting a brand new school. Wilmot just got a huge renovation and remodel. Not that I'm competitive, but again, I want the best for our kids. And just one other quick tidbit, and then we'll move on. We currently have over 200 kids who live in Clear Creek. There are Clear Creek kids, but they go outside of the district. And so certainly facilities is only one part of that puzzle. What happens on the inside and in our beautiful outdoor environment matters more than anything else. But as a mom, when I'm shopping and I'm going to different schools, I make judgments based on what I see, and I'm an evergreen mom, so I just have to call that out. It is not the main driver, it is not the core reason. We need to do best for our kids and our families who currently go to Clear Creek, but that's in the back of my mind over here. So I feel responsibility to meet the needs of our Clear Creek families.
And just to kind of build off of that, we're very fortunate from the last bond. As a part of my job is to do the maintenance work. I love repairing the items that nobody sees, boilers, mechanical. It makes my life a whole lot easier. But knowing that we took care of a lot of the much needed needs with the last bond, we feel it's important that we update the areas that people actually see, and not behind the scenes, and that we get families and back excited for our schools. All right. Clear Creek Middle School and High School. So again, this was something that I met with the school. We talked to the community with and hearing from the community. We have an amazing field out there, but from what I've gathered and from what I've heard, and I completely understand, is that we don't have any field lights out there. Something that we were not able to accomplish. I've heard from multiple families that they would love to see field lights out there. We also have to take into consideration that this building is only 20 years old. So we do have other items on our CDD report for this facility, but items that we are working to improve on in our capital reserve. So our yearly funding for that kind of items. So this would be one of those instant type of projects that people can actually see. Whereas we're not in the point at this building where we need to take care of major mechanical or major issues like that. So the field lights are on there. The flooring, believe it or not, used to be a lot redder than this. You can kind of see it in the corners, but
Stripes in the middle too.
a lot of this facility still has the original. Yes, it's still in good shape in a way, but it does at some point, it smells, it's bad, it rips, it tears, and we are at the point where there's no possible way to repair it. A lot of this is just the carpet repair. But we're also at the 20-year mark where in terms of maintenance, you typically redo your gym floor. Usually by 20 years, you have about, an inch and a half worth of wax on there, quite a bit. And it's time to just take it all the way down to the floorboards or the hardwood floors, have it sanded, repainted, and redone. And so knowing that we're at that point, it's one of those immediate type of expenses that we would like to take care of. And talking with the school, this is one of the projects that we would like to add into that bond.
I think the next slide you talk, so you just click on it, but then let's keep going. And also keeping an eye on the time, so I want to make sure we have time for questions. You talked about that already. I can jump in here, and then I'll talk about Idaho Springs, and then I'll hand it back to you if that's okay. Can you tell this is the first time we've done this? So give us feedback at the end. So, we've been kind of wrestling with what we do in Idaho Springs, and I'm gonna go there next. But we did some comparison. You'll see why this is important in just a minute. So we know kind of like-sized districts, some are a little bit bigger, some are a little bit smaller, are doing some similar builds. We apply for best grants. Well, gosh, we have the last 3 years, been successful on most of them. And you hear what's coming across kind of the land in terms of capital construction in schools. And these are some average costs, 40 million, 40 million, 45 million, 48 million, 89, that's no judging. In terms of what it costs for a brand new build. Because I remember coming on as a new superintendent and I had people whispering in my ear, why didn't you build a new elementary school in Idaho Springs? And I was twitchy. I'm like, I don't want to think about buildings right now. I want to get to know the community, and I want to talk about instruction, and I want to talk about what's happening with our kids and teaching and learning. But I've had folks say that to me in the past, like, just build a new building. Maybe that is the best option, that's not my recommendation right now, but again, feedback from the community. So let's talk about Idaho Springs, and I'm gonna go back to that slide that we looked at quickly, because that's the one that I wanna start with. Thank you, right here. And if, I know some of you came to the meetings that we had, gosh, back in February of 2020, before the pandemic. And we were really kind of asking this question of, first, what should we do with building 103? And I should clarify, that's the former middle school, former high school. I labeled it as building 103 because I feel like it feels more hip, and maybe it'll make it feel more hip to everyone as we talk about it. And we had this question that we posed. We said, well, what do we think about this in terms of being an elementary school? And so what does that mean for Carlson? And could we renovate this to be an elementary school plus other things for the community? And what we asked our folks who came to us and what we put out to the community was, let us know if you want us to pursue this question. Like, do you hate this idea? Should we never say it again? Or do you want us to look at it? And the answer was, yep, we want you to pursue this more. So we did. We did a facility assessment, thanks to Anderson Mason Dale. We got more information on it. And then we've been talking about it as a board and talking about it with the Carlson community, the families, the educators. And we think we have a pretty interesting, not even interesting, we think we have a great solution that could not only provide amazing spaces for kids in Idaho Springs, our elementary kids, but also provide some benefits to the community that don't currently exist. It has a huge, gorgeous gym. It's got performing arts up on the 4th floor, needs to be renovated. It's got the potential to put a community kitchen in there. We could do infant toddler care. And I have to be careful on how I say these things, because when we talk about a bond, it's specific to the elementary school, and you'll see a list in just a minute. Some of the other ideas are things that could come either with additional dollars, grant dollars, or down the road. But we're really trying to think about this as what's the best short and long-term decision, not just for tomorrow. But we really are pushing ourselves on that. So, I mean, a few other things that I should have said and I didn't, but I think most of you know, because a lot of you have been there before. We as a district, we have more building space than we need right now, and that's expensive to keep and maintain, and we need a better solution. And Carlson's 85 years old, and building 103 was built in the late 60s, just like I was there. Now you know my age. So we think that might provide a better solution when we look at the list of needs. So let me take you back to that part, and I apologize for the jumping around. There we go. So I feel like my job is to inform the board and inform the community, like, here's everything we know. Here's my best recommendation, but this is a community decision, this is a board decision. What we know right now is that 103 has some amazing potential. It's gonna take dollars because it needs, I'm just gonna call things out, it needs an asbestos abatement, it needs some HVAC love, it needs some roofing love. If you've been in there recently, you know it's been mothballed for over 10 years, I think. But that doesn't take away the amazing location, tucked into the mountainside, near trails, a beautiful parking lot, a hug and go, you know, that's, again, if you went to school there, not that I'm looking at anyone in the room, you know what it provides. Did you guys know that? No, okay. Part of the reason Carlson's Playground took so long is at that point we were talking to the community going, what should we do? And we decided at that point, this has to be, we've got to research this, we've got to follow the process, we have to talk to the community, and my kids at Carlson can't play on a playground that's got screws and nails and big splinters, and they're gonna like break their legs from it. So we decided to finally move forward. We designed the playground thinking about, if we decide building 103 is the best place for our kids and our community, we'll move the playground over. Sure, there's a cost to that, and actually a lot of it's in the site work, because we've got the equipment, but we designed it with that in mind. We have heard, I don't have, like written confirmation, but CDOT's verbally agreed to the city that they'll build a pedestrian bridge. That kind of changed I think people's thinking about connecting the sides. And as I've listened to some of the other historical conversations, I think it's time to reunite the two different sides of Idaho Springs. I mean, I don't say that lightly, but gosh, we've got amazing opportunities if kids and families could walk back and forth. Anyway, we've not gone far into a design process. We've looked at various designs and we've said, hey, we think we can estimate costs, and we're estimating it right now just for the elementary school at 24.8, which is like, whoa, that's a big number. But then I think about a brand new build, and that's not as big as that. And it's an amazing place. It's in an amazing place. Our community would help us design that. Some of the things I think Mitch mentioned before that I get excited about, I know infant toddler care is a pain point in our district. Becky Dancer, my director of teaching and learning, spends so much of her time working with some cross-organizational groups. We don't have infant toddler care. That doesn't always fall under a district's umbrella, but we know it's a gap in our community. We'd love to be able to help with that. We have space. Performing arts, George Marlin put a little bug in my ear and said, wouldn't it be cool if we had a community kitchen that folks could access in town? I can't do that in the same kitchen where I've got school prep happening, but if we're doing a reno, there's potential to build the school kitchen and with additional grant dollars or future dollars, build a community kitchen right next door. Like we could scrape it down and get it ready so that someone could come in and say, we want this here. That's a community decision. I mentioned the gym. We've had conversations with Colorado Mountain College, Red Rocks, Metro State. Have not talked to Mines yet, but we've heard they might be interested. What if we had some satellite classrooms for both our high school kids as well as our adult learners? There's a possibility for that. And then currently we house Mountain Youth Network because they're an amazing partner and they're our kids. And so we have a lease with them. We'd love to keep them or similar groups. Like this building could provide that space. So yeah, I talked about the stuff that's down below. So I get really excited about that, but again, I fully acknowledge this is a community decision around what folks believe about that. I should probably hand it back to you now, Mitch.
You're good.
Sure.
I'm sure that
And I really,
you've got about 5 minutes left.
yep, I'll try to do it in 3 or 4. So, and I'm happy, we'll stay as long as we need to answer questions. So, brand new superintendent, I'll own it. It was really interesting coming in when we had a bond, and I've learned a lot in the last 2 years, I'm gonna say that, and I feel like we've done amazing work. And we wanna make sure that we're upping our communication around the bond projects. We're upping our transparency. We are just about to launch, if it's not already live right now, a dedicated bond project webpage. That was kind of a goal of mine, oh gosh, about a year ago, and I'm just gonna own it. I couldn't get to it. Last year was a little bit crazy, keeping schools open and everyone healthy and safe. But we're really committing to, we know we need to put more information out to the community. Here's what's happening. Here are the costs, here's our status. Pretty excited about that, as well as, our board meetings are public and they've been Zoom-tastical lately. We're looking forward to welcoming folks back and continuing to be virtual so we can do updates at board meetings. We have done and are excited to continue requests for proposals so that we're putting it out there, competitive bid process. We'd love to be able to hire local. We were pretty successful with that up in Georgetown. Wherever we can, we really try to. And this is just the mom and me. We always did background checks for folks who are in our schools. So what's the cost? The cost is $33 million. If you've read some of my articles, I've been writing about this a little bit already, but have not gone into a ton of detail. And part of that is because we've tried to be really thoughtful about A, what are the most important projects at each school? I was up at Georgetown this morning, meeting with folks up there and saying, what do you guys think? What are your priorities? And then, what's the cost gonna be? And we're in that weird place right now, again, of escalating costs. So we're researching, we're using our CDE estimates, we are using our knowledge. Mike and Justin have led more construction projects than we could probably even count on all of our fingers and toes. And that's how we come to these numbers. We know there's gonna be surprises, and we know that it actually costs when you're working with a financial firm around the bond. So that's some of the stuff that's down here. We can come back to those and go deeper in those depending on where people have questions. What I really wanna know as a property owner is, what's this gonna cost me? And is it worth what I'm gonna get out of it? Is it gonna help my home value eventually go up? I know I can't answer that, that's for a tax advisor, I'm backing away from Kathleen. She won't let me say that, but, I mean, we know, right? If we have great schools and we have great facilities, that helps everyone's values. So, if we were to consider a 25-year bond, and right now I'm thinking, and we've not declared a question, I need to be clear about that too. August 17th is when the board will vote on that and talk about it. We've talked about a 25-year and a 30-year bond. 25-year bond, here are the numbers. So for every 100K of assessed value, not what it could sell for today, but your assessed value from the county is $35 per year, or about $3 a month. And then for commercial property, that's what it looks like. So, and again, we'll get to questions and we can come back to this if this is something that people want to talk more about. But numbers are really important, especially as we think about all of our residents. And then the question of, why now? Why not wait another year? Why not wait 2 years? I think this is probably the biggest piece right here, not knowing what's going to happen with construction and escalation costs. Every year we wait, two things happen. One, we have more needs, they pile up and they cost more. And so that tends, when you look at school districts across the nation, that tends to be the driver, especially when you're developing a long-term plan. Some districts can come to you right now and say, we're gonna go out for a bond every 5 years or every 10 years. And here are the projects that we know we're gonna need to do then. We'd love to get to that point. That's some of the work that Mike and Justin are doing. Right now, we have really dug into what are the most important needs to take care of now and not wait on, and what do we think is gonna be the best for our community. So, I don't think I need to read through, you can see what's on there. This, I will say, this has been hard. I love Idaho Springs. I love walking across the bridge from the district office and going to Carl. I love that. I love that it's in the town right there. I wake up in the middle of the night worried about kids with the 3 gas stations right there, and I watch the Greyhound and the bus day drop folks and love them all. I'm glad they're traveling, but I don't know that I want them across from our elementary school, and I worry about our lack of hug and go. And I worry about, as we know we're gonna see more growth, whether we want it or not, and I'm not a proponent of unchartered growth, don't hear that from me. But we're gonna have more traffic, and this is gonna change each year. So I worry about that. Okay. Oh. I'm trying to get this as fast as I could. We do have this at the very end, so you'll have all that info. But I wanna go back here, and I haven't done a lot on Facebook lately, you guys.
We don't miss you.
Okay. I will get back onto that, but our website will have a bond page again. If it's not live now, it'll be live tomorrow. So if you would write your questions on the cards, that'll help us sort them. And then we'll answer questions and open it up for conversation as well. It helps us to capture them for the FAQs. And Kathleen will answer all of them. That's gonna be so wonderful. And I can grab them if you guys have questions. Yeah, how many kids are at the middle school, high school? I can look to our principal right over here.
We have right around 350 in the building.
And how many night games do you have for 250 worth of lights?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Home games, gosh, last year was a weird year. Five,
Five or
yeah,
six.
yeah,
Maybe
you're right.
5 or
Just think
6.
about goal digger. Yep.
Does it also still do practice times if you have field lights?
And that's only one sport.
True, good point. Soccer, lacrosse.
Do
Yeah.
they do night games?
Football's, I'm processing through it. Football's fall, that's when it gets darkest soonest. Soccer could be night, and I should be letting Gold answer. Lacrosse, typically not in the evening, I don't think. I mean, it's not that it's not possible, yeah.
If I may,
Yeah.
in my former position over at Jefferson County Public Schools,
Yes,
we put in night lights over at Conifer, and then also Ralston Valley High School wanted to pursue that. It wasn't just about the games. In the fall, we had the time change, and so things start to get dark earlier in the day, and in order to practice, especially during playoff seasons, where sport's very, very competitive, then we're playing in the dark or we're not practicing at all. And if we have to bring in temporary lighting, that's not as safe as the permanent lighting. And unfortunately, you know, the communities, I'm gonna suggest that Clear Creek is that way, very competitive. They wanna see the hometown teams win, and they'd like to have every advantage there. So it's not just about the games, but also about the regular use, especially during the times when daylight changes.
I will say anecdotally, because when I leave here, so I'm in Evergreen and I go past Evergreen High School and they just got their lights up. You guys may have seen the signs and the big, the thing they did with that. The lights are on a pretty regular basis. Because kids are practicing, people are renting, the community's renting the field out. It gets used, I mean, it really does, so yeah.
And we
Yeah,
haven't
I'm gonna-
had the opportunity in the past.
Say it again?
We haven't had that opportunity in the
True.
past. And now we do. We have a stadium that our teams, our students want to be in. And so when we have lights, that will open up different opportunities. Our gym is busy in the winter. Morning we have practice. We have 2 sets of practices in the evening in order to accommodate all of our teams. Lights on the field would do the same.
These are good, these are hard questions, you guys. These are good.
We're in school, they're supposed to be.
I know, I like that, yeah, so, yeah, and I may toss some out to my friends who are in here. One of them, I'm gonna read it out loud and then talk about it. Has anyone looked at merging King Murphy area into Jeffco instead of competing? That question's been raised, that's a really good question. So far, well, truly that's a board decision. So far, I believe our King Murphy families, well, I feel a responsibility to meet the needs of, you know, they're in Clear Creek, and I have a number of parents over there who are gold diggers through and through, and they're so excited to send their kids here. I don't know what kind of anger we would get if we talked about that. It's come up, but I don't think it's been a conversation at the board level.
It hasn't.
Okay.
I'd be curious if they have the capacity to absorb that quantity of students.
How many kids do you have, Kimberly?
Right now, about 100. No, it's a little bit over. We'd like to get back up to 300, 350. And I would say King Murphy's kind of one of those, well, it's a little bit of a pain point in terms of enrollment. And without going into too much detail, because I think there's a lot there. And if you've kind of, you guys are, you've been with the district, so you know kind of the history behind there, and I don't need to go into all that. Again, being an Evergreen myself and supervising the Evergreen elementaries, some of the word on the street is, well, buy a house in Clear Creek, but then you can just, you know, send your kids to a Jeffco school. That's not okay. We need to be a fantastic mountain choice. And again, when I walk into King Murphy, I would put my kid in any class there. I love what they're doing there, and I love the instructional changes that we're navigating with experiential learning and getting kids outdoors. We have fantastic folks there. I think people have, it's dropped off their radar, and you walk in and you feel like you're walking into the eighties, you guys, and then you walk into, Wilmot, and it's gorgeous, like, that's hard to compete with, it really is, so, yeah, I mean, that's a really hard one. Are you planning, go ahead.
Can I ask a slight clarification, but since I live right here, I have no concept of that. I've never in my life lived somewhere before where you have to drive past another school district to get
No,
yours.
it's weird.
And it's just bizarre to me.
I agree.
So, there's like 100 kids, you said, give or take, in the elementary school. How many at the junior high, high school level have to drive past Evergreen High School to get here?
Ooh, that's a good question. I need my transportation director to answer that, but our
Okay.
buses go right by it, you're right, and I don't know.
Well, because I guess the other part of that is then, because we have open enrollment in Colorado, but it depends on if the schools have capacity, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
if all those kids over there want to go to those, I mean, what are the odds of getting in? I have no concept.
Yeah, depends on the year. I mean,
Okay.
again, I know that anecdotally.
But
from
good,
supervisors.
bad, just generally, like high probability, low probability of getting in?
Honestly, it really depends on, there was a number of years where there was no way.
Okay,
kids were
that's
getting
what
in.
it is, okay.
Since pandemic, I think enrollment has opened up because some folks have gone completely online. Kathleen, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that. We kind of live that reality.
Yeah,
a little
it's
bit together.
really tough to do, but I
Yeah.
think Evergreen mountain areas are all a little bit down from their capacity, so they'll go past.
Yeah.
I think everybody's got pretty good.
Yeah,
There's only two major communities that you would actually drive past Evergreen High School to get to here. But there's a couple more communities that you are closer drive time to Evergreen. Does that make sense?
So the last one, you're saying somebody may have to drive slightly south, but it's still closer than driving here?
Yes.
Okay.
It'd be like Evergreen West and Upper Bear.
Yeah, you would be closer to Evergreen, but you're not actually passing it. Brook Forest and some of the
Forest
stuff in
Estates.
Buffalo Park that's in Clear Creek County, they actually literally drive right past Evergreen High School.
That's me. That's
Yeah.
my neck of the woods.
oh yeah, that's right, you live over there, you would know.
Both my kids went to King Murphy and then now they're here.
Yep, so, I feel like I could like talk paragraphs on that, because I get really excited about what's happening here, and actually the outreach that we're getting from especially kind of the North Evergreen area, because for some of our Jeffco families in North Evergreen, we are closer, again, that, to me, that shouldn't be our driver should be what's doing right for our Clear Creek kids, our community. I would have a hard time looking at our King Murphy kids and our King Murphy families and having that conversation really about closing the school. Jeffco would not keep the school open, they would close it and send them to other schools. I don't know if even how that would work, it's two different counties, I'm not sure if that's legally possible, I don't know. I have had folks who have said, hey, have you thought about consolidating all of the schools, Georgetown, and I said, sure, we've thought about it, but as a parent, I wouldn't want my kid from Georgetown on a bus coming down, and I was up in Georgetown today, it's a beautiful community up there. Our elementary kids all of them deserve the very best.
How
And
many kids are in Georgetown?
Ooh, 110, 120?
I thought there was like 75.
No, Tina, who just recently moved, she really built that up. They're doing great work. Really good work up there. So proud of them. Yeah, and here's the gamble we make, right? Like, sure, we could say, let's consolidate everyone. We will lose those kids. We will, if we do that, if we do a consolidation. I feel like we've got enough energy, we've got enough great things happening, and we have enough kids who live in our community who I think families now are going, wait a minute, we are considering coming back because they live here. I feel like that's our best strategy. We need to meet the needs of our community kids. And I do feel like as I'm watching the real estate turn, it's a crazy market, but I don't think our projections from CDE are 100% accurate. It's gonna be a weird year this year, especially coming out of the pandemic, but people are moving out of the city. Floyd Hill is on fire for real estate. And in terms of Idaho Springs, as you guys know, that's like a whole nother, the growth is coming. And I'm not like ringing the bells like, oh my God, what do we do tomorrow? We have time, but I believe our best strategy is to really invest in our schools, invest in our kids, invest in our community. I think that's the right thing to do. Are you planning to reduce space if maintaining excess space is a problem? That's exactly what we're doing. Mitch, I don't know if you want to take that one or not when we think about all of our buildings and facilities.
I didn't hear the whole question,
Sure.
so why don't you just do it?
Okay. How are you planning to reduce space if maintaining excess space is a problem? That's what we're working through right now. We don't need both building 103 and Carlson. So our recommendation is, we think it's a better investment to invest in 103, and then that would mean we'd sell Carlson. And when we think about locations and we think about best highest use, we think 103 that's best highest use as a school. We've had offers, we've been under contract, they've fallen. We've had folks who've looked at it and said, yeah, this is a school. But again, I could go into that a ton. So yes, we're trying to reduce space.
Do you have numbers of how many million feet do you have, how much do you want to cut down, how much do you need to cut down?
I'm looking at Moon, and we do.
That would make a great slide.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's good feedback. That's really
That
good
is good
feedback.
feedback. We don't have that just yet, but we're
Yeah.
working on getting into that direction
Yeah.
as we rebrand and refocus on facilities and what's the right size of our square footage for a population. And then, the other thing is to better understand where our population is migrating out to and why, right? So as we're working through that and building, we want to try to keep that flexibility going with 103. There's just so many funds and so many dollars to
God, well, I'm a quantitative guy, so
Yeah.
if you were to tell me, we've got 2 million square feet and we could get by easily with half of that, and by consolidating, getting rid of Carlson and spending this $30 million, we're gonna take care of at least half of that overage. That would be much more persuasive to me than.
we will get that for you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm looking at some
Thank
of the other ones, I'm kind of bouncing around. What will happen to the Carlson property? Might it become a source of funding? Yeah, absolutely. So if the community says yes, please to building 103, then once that's renovated for kids, we move kids over, and then, well, it's a board decision, I shouldn't speak out of turn. I think we'd sell it, right?
I don't think we'd be doing our job if we hold on to it.
Right.
And that building's about 65,000 square feet, and there's probably 20,000 square feet in the building on 103 that would be clean from asbestos and ready for other community partners. So if I had to take a guess, sorry, Mike, I do it, we probably have 80,000 square feet more than we need.
And
Let's
65 of that is at Carlson?
Yes, 65 is a Carlson.
I can actually quote it exactly. It's like 55.6, I think.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm like, I should correct them,
No,
yeah,
do.
Andy.
You haven't said anything about the bus barn.
Yeah.
The football property's gonna be sold.
Yep.
And they're planning on breaking ground in the spring, and the community doesn't know where the bus barn's gonna go, how it's gonna be paid for.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, really good question. So I'll start it, and then Mitch and Mike and Justin, please jump in with anything I miss. So the sale from the football field and the bus barn, that together will actually pay for the new bus barn, transportation, and that's gonna give us just enough to build that. I could be wrong, but I don't think we'll have extra out of that, especially with increasing construction costs. We'll probably have to think about, again, what that's gonna look like. We've talked about a number of locations. We've actually talked about doing it on the same site as building 103 up on the track. Although there's also been a lot of folks eyeing that for, we'd love to do housing up there or something else, but we did some initial, Justin did some initial work with some folks in modeling. We could do a bus barn up there and have them come down into 103 and into 103's parking lot. So kind of a cool configuration there. We could also build it, that's the south side, we could build it on the north side as well. There's enough space over there. We wanna make sure, if that's the decision, that we leave space for 2 different playgrounds, early childhood playground as well as the K-6 playground. But we think we can fit it all in. Another spot that we've looked about actually is here on Floyd Hill. I'm totally talking out of turn now. We've talked about, could we do it somewhere in between here and the highway? Those are really preliminary conversations, but there's some potential for that. We looked at some other areas kind of up and down the I-70 corridor. We don't have money to buy a big piece of property, and there wasn't anything that was flat that didn't require a whole ton of work with it, that someone either wanted to swap us or give us or sell us cheaply. That could change. We looked at some of the stuff right west of the tunnels, on both sides of the highway, but didn't find a suitable site there. And then as the process slowed down a little bit with that development, we've paused for a little bit, and Justin and I have some emails going back and forth. We know we need to dig back in, but it's kind of what we know right now with it.
How many buses does the school district have, and how many acres do you need for the parking lot? I'm just curious, I have no idea.
Yeah, I have a slide on that. Third?
So we,
I was gonna say 2 to 3 acres
Yeah.
for the building and the parking space.
actually, we're more, it's a little over 1 acre, but we could make a little bit under an acre work for us. That was part of one, as Karen mentioned, we did a feasibility study with an architect and a engineer firm to see if the track and field area of building 103 was even possible, knowing that it's a very steep incline from 103. And I think buses are very strict that you can't do more than like a 6% grade. We did find out that it was possible, and even with looking at that, it was a little, I have to go back, but I think it was right around that 1 acre mark. We could actually build the bus barn and actually have, it was I think maybe 3 bays for each bus or something for indoor parking for a mechanic and for a small office. But it would also house our 14, I think we have roughly 14 buses. We have around 15 or 16 small vehicles, and then we have 4 maintenance trucks. With all of that, we could still make it work on the track and also still have parking for employees.
That would assume no growth?
I think we'd have to bring in our transportation director on that one. But I think we are at our normal capacity in terms of buses.
Yeah. Some buses are full, some buses are not. I mean,
But we would definitely go more into detail if the sale went through to make sure that we were planning, 5 to 10 years, to make sure that we did have that availability in the room for those buses.
Some other really good questions are the 200 kids who are Quick Creek residents but go elsewhere K-12. I'd say they're pre-K-12. And then do we interview these parents yearly to determine when and why we lost them? Actually, that's something we dug into this last year. We've not done it yearly. We, especially at King Murphy, we did focus groups, and we, it wasn't everyone, but we did focus groups with past families, current families, and future families, and tried to dig into what's important to them with programming, and if and when they make other choices, why do they make those other choices? There may have been some surveying in the past before I was here. We actually partnered with a group called Front Range BOCES. We're a member of the BOCES. It's a really great group. And we had someone besides us do those interviews because we felt like we get more honest answers, and then they provided the trends to us, which is actually a big part of why we're shifting at King Murphy to experiential and outdoor learning, because we heard that it's a really important theme. So, and it's, without going into a ton of detail, I will say it's a whole host of reasons. We have a good sense of what programming people want, and so we know we need to build our facilities and build our learning environments for what people want. Preschool, again, is a pain point. If they can't get in, they don't usually come back, so that's a really important thing. So yeah, we've got those trends. If someone wanted them, I could put them in the FAQs. This one I'm gonna come back to. This is a really good one around accessing the properties. And then this one is a Kathleen question. What's the incremental revenue per student do preschoolers count?
Preschool is not funded.
Right.
Governor Polis's big push when he first made was to fully fund kindergarten. So the only funding we get for preschools is for special education preschoolers. So most, and then there are slots called the Colorado State Preschool Program. And I know Karen, I think you guys do have some CPE slots.
Yes, we've got
I'm not
after.
sure how many of the total.
Yep.
But you get allocated from the state. So
Yes.
it doesn't always, cover every student. And Polis is still pushing to extend preschool, to be free, but,
And we've been advocating for that. We've submitted multiple letters, we sat on a focus call. We are like, we're Clear Creek, give us everything we can for our children, which helped us with that too, which is great. And our per pupil revenue, I think that's what the question is, like, what do we?
If you add one more student, how much more money?
well, in preschool,
I know, grades.
K-12.
K-12.
oh gosh.
Right.
I know Jeff Curry.
That's right around $10,000.
I go to the next question, I'll pull it up real
Yeah.
quick.
I always think of it as $9,000 to $10,000 and she can get one.
That's probably
That's
close
close
enough.
I usually quoted you a less amount. because that's what I
And once we capture someone as a preschool student, I would make a strong argument that we can retain them, and then we see annual revenue after that, because we capture them as elementary students.
And that was the flavor I was getting from the presentation, was preschool is kind of like a loss leader. Like you give somebody a coupon for 50% off the first year, first you get them to come back.
Right, right.
And it doesn't carry on as well, if you capture their oldest child, you have an opportunity then to capture younger ones.
Right. Right, well, thank you. And one of the things I should actually say about preschool too, because this came out of the trends when we did the focus groups, folks at both schools, Carlson and King Murphy, future and current parents said, we know that before and after school care is really important, and we know anecdotally from talking with families, if you don't offer before and after school care, because right now they get bused over to EPRD or Kids Corner, but Kids Corner can't help preschoolers, they're not certified to do it. So we are building the before and after school care for preschoolers. That's part of the work of Becky Dancer. Because we know that's gonna meet a need for our parents. And we think, especially over at King Murphy, that will help our working families. So there's a really good question here that says, how do you access the tracker playgrounds when the gate is locked? What I really want to say is just climb over, but that's not the right answer. And then what are these hours that the facilities are open to the public? Really good questions, and I may need some Justin help on that. We just got a question on that. Carlson, we just opened up the playground as of July 1st, except when Kids Corner is there. And when Kids Corner is there, we keep it locked just for safety reasons with CCMRD. They've been, I think, not always super great about unlocking it when they leave and then locking it back up, and they finish at what, 6 o'clock at night?
Like around 5 o'clock, and
5,
so
okay.
it's one of our growing pains and getting on the same page with
Yeah.
them. We don't have our custodian there, we move them to the day shift instead of the night shift.
Yeah,
And
we'll
so
get
it's really me communicating with the rec center to make sure that they unlock that each and every day. Because it should be open from dusk to dawn.
Yep.
And then, like I said, right after Kids Corner is done, right around that 5 o'clock mark, it should be unlocked.
Yep.
And then weekends, it should be fully unlocked
Yep.
for any day or for any time during that dusk to dawn. So if it's not ever unlocked, please let me know, and we'll keep making sure. It's just one of those little growing pains. As soon as school starts, I see this being eliminated, because again, we'll have our night custodian on site to make sure that that's opened. Please let me know, because I really wanna make sure that the community has access to that.
And I
One
know,
thing you can do is you can reach out to Idaho Springs Police Department, they lock all the bathrooms and open them
nice.
dusk and dawn. If they had a key to that, they could also do that for you as one of their passes. All the like park bathrooms and stuff, they lock every night and unlock every morning. That could just be one of their things along that route to do that every night.
That's great.
thank you for offering that. And I was texting with Robin earlier. Robin, our HR person, is gonna make, so Lorraine Schwartz, our new principal, woo, we'll get that info as well. She's back on, she's officially started today, not just back on the job, so she's been working all summer secretly. So that, and then in terms of here, and Gould laughed, I believe it's the same, well, first, Gold Digger Trail, which we're building, will always be open. That's gonna have no gates or locks. That's really exciting. If you want more info on that, I'll give it to you. It's trail around the perimeter of the property that is a project that kids are co-designing with Clear Creek Open Space and that youth network. The athletic field and the track, when kids are not in session here, should be unlocked. I think we just got our signage posted, or is that, I'm
That's
looking
for
at
Carlson.
Justin.
This one's, the signs are already posted
Signs
for
are
the
up,
most
good.
part, and I don't think it's been locked this
Okay.
entire summer, but we can always double check that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and
that
if-
should be pretty much open.
Please let your friends and neighbors not let their dogs dirty our playing field.
Is there a trash can near the gate to assist with that process?
I think there is, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually with the trail, we'll put in, dog poo bags and, yeah, cause we wanna make sure that our community, like folks on the hill and anyone can use the facilities. I mean, it's a community facility, right? And I think for a long time, unfortunately as a district, through no one's fault, but we've not been as open with that. And the playground at Carlson was locked. George Marlin said he owned that. He said it was his fault because he used to throw rocks at the windows and that's why they fenced it and locked it. I don't know if it's true or not, but, we should call it the George Marlin fence when we lock in. But it was really important to us and to the businesses. Like I have this vision of parents eating at Tommyknockers and telling their kids, hey, zip across and go play on the playground. It's really important to us that we're good stewards that way. And this is a great facility. When I'm here during the day, cover your ears, I'll take a brain break and I'll go out there and I'll run the track and then call Mitch for my home and come back in. We want the community to use those facilities as well. And the trail will be for mountain biking, hiking. We're gonna build reflection stations with benches. That will only be 2 at first, but we'll get more. We'll have some learning signs. Melissa English, our science teacher, is helping build it, and we want that to be available to the community. And I think the word is, folks, you guys would know, I think folks are using it already with dogs, which is great. And I know they're supposed to be on leash, but as a property owner, I can go down there and walk my dog, go inside in here off leash and run him around. That's a great advantage of living in the mountains. And this should be a place people can come. I think we answered the questions on here. Are there lingering, yeah, Candy?
So is redoing Carlson up to date, off the books completely? I mean, I know it's not in the bond issue, but have you thought about fixing Carlson and spending $2.5 million, raising the 103 and then selling 103? That property's as valuable as anything. Would take a lot less money. I think a lot of people in the community could swallow that better to have, a $15 million bond rather than a $33 million bond. Carlson has 100 kids. And, Hillman talked about, he has a friend at CDOT who's gonna build a walkway. Well, it's not in writing. I asked who the man was and I didn't get an answer. And Floyd Hill has been talked about for 25 years and it's still not done. So, the walkway, I don't think you could sell that to the community because you don't have it in writing that
Right.
CDOT's gonna do it.
Right, yeah, so good points all around, and I wish CDOT would give it to it, and we've reached out, so yeah, but you're spot on, we need something that says
Yeah.
this is gonna happen,
And
because I think that is a key piece. As a side note, we've thought about what's our backup if that doesn't happen right away, and we do bus shuttle loops, but that's not our long-term solution, we really need that bridge, so good point there. We've kind of sliced and diced it lots of different ways, and I might ask Mitch or Justin or Moonin to jump in with anything that I'm forgetting. Because we looked at that too. I think the biggest thing that we landed on, well, first I should say, nothing's off the table. Like the board hasn't called the question yet. I believe will be August 17th. So it's good feedback, right? And the board will talk about it on the 12th at the work session. And then I think say, here's the bond question on the 17th. So nothing's final until that happens. So far our conversations have been, yep, we could do that. We could put money into Carlson. But the worry is we can't change the location of Carlson. And so 103 provides more, it is more costly, you're absolutely right. And what we might want to do, help me remember this, you guys, is cost out. What would this bond cost people versus this bond? Because what I'd want to know is what's the difference as a property owner? Like, am I talking $10 a year, or am I talking, $20 a year that's different, or $20 a month? We should put those side by side so people know what the incremental cost is. I think we just landed on this place of, we don't feel like that's a good long-term solution, because yes, to be only, I think we're probably more like I should look up the enrollment, I'll put it on the FAQs, because I know it's more than 100, but I can't tell you the number off the top of my head, but you're right, it's lower than we want it to be right now. I believe fully it's gonna grow with the growth that's happening. Like, I have a knock on wood when I say that, I don't wanna jinx anything, but I really do feel like the growth is coming regardless. And when I think about the programming, and I think about which building do I recommend we as a district invest in, I feel like a better investment is 103. It's got complexities. It's got fewer years on it. It's got more opportunities for the community. It's got the parking, and I don't wanna fixate on the parking, but even just the ability to drive in and out, that is a challenge right now, and I feel like it's only gonna get bigger. Those don't exist over at Carlson. That was really the conversation. What's the better, not only short-term, but long-term investment? Mitch, what am I missing with that? Or like,
We ran those numbers, the
That's right.
incremental difference, and, they could probably be updated with things we've learned since then. But if you include, the sale of the property that is not repurposed, the incremental difference was about $2 million. And for spending $2 million more on the building 103 side, we end up with 50% more usable space, or not 50%, but yeah, almost 50% more usable space, which can
55
be
versus
put to
86.
use by other community partners.
So I went to a meeting before COVID at the high school, and it was estimated, you said you had just gotten something from the state that
Yeah.
said Carlson needed $9 million in upgrades, and,
Yep.
the high school needed 22.5.
Yeah.
And I just read something